ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानजनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकधामयं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपरकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सह गणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधा कान्त नमोऽस्तु ते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये पञ्चकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासारि गौरभक्तवृन्द हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Today we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 18, text 40, text 41. Let's see. Yeah, text 41. Brahmana Kshatriya Visham Shudranam Cha Parantapa Karmani Pravibhaktani Subhava Prabhavan Gunai. There is no being existing either here or among the demigods in the higher planetary systems, which is freed from the three modes of material nature. Sorry, that was the wrong one. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are distinguished by their qualities of work, O chastiser of the enemy, in accordance with their modes of nature. Text 42. Shamodamastapa shocham shanti rajavamevacha jnanam vijnanam astikyam brahma karma swabhavajam. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, wisdom, knowledge, and religiousness. These are the qualities by which the Brahmanas work. Text 43. Shoryam tejo dhriti daksham yudhe chapya palayanam dhanam ishvara bhavascha kshatram karma svabhavajam. Heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity, and leadership are the qualities of work for the Kshatriyas. 644. Kishigorakyavanijam vaishyakarma swabhavajam paricharyatmakam karma shudrasyapi swabhavajam. Farming, cow protection, and business are the qualities of work for the Vaishyas. And for the Shudras, there is labor and service to others. Text 43. Swe swe karmanya virata samsiddhim labate naraha swakarma nirata siddhim yata vindati tatstrinu. By following his qualities of work, every man can become perfect. Now please hear from me how this can be done. Text 46. Yata pravritir bhutanam yena sarvam idham tatam swakarmanatam abhyachya siddhim vindati manava. By worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all pervading, man can, in the performance of his own duty, attain perfection. 647. Shreyan swadharmo viguna paradharma sanustitat svabhava niyatam karma kurvanapnoti kilbisham. It is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Prescribed duties according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. 648. Sahajam karma kunteya sadosham api na tyajet sarvaram bahi doshena dumhenagnierivavritaha. Every endeavor is covered by some sort of fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. Therefore, one should not give up the work which is born of his nature, O son of Kunti, even if such work is full of faults. 649. Asakta buddhi sarvatra jitatma vigata spriha nishkarmya siddhim paramam sanyasanari gachati. One can obtain the results of renunciation simply by self-control and by becoming unattached to material things and disregarding material enjoyments. That is the highest perfectional stage of renunciation. Text 50. Siddhim prapto yatha brahma tatapnoti nibodhame samasanaiva kunteya nishta jnana sipapara. O son of Kunti, learn from me in brief how one can attain to the supreme perfectional stage, Brahman, by acting in the way which I shall now summarize. Okay. Should we do the next one? It's going to be a cluster. Should I do it? Okay. Text 51 to 53. Buddhya vishuddhaya yukto dhrityatmanam meyam yacha shabdhadin vishayang styakta raga dvesha viyudhyasacha vivikta sevilhagvashi yata vakaya manasaha dhyana yogo paro nityam vairagyam samupashritaha ahankaram balam dharpam Kamam kodam parigraham vimucha nirmamam shanto brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Being purified by his intelligence and controlling the mind with determination, giving up the objects of sense gratification, being freed from attachment and hatred, one who lives in a secluded place, who eats little and who controls the body and the tongue, and is always in trance and is detached, who is without false ego, false strength, false pride, lust, anger, and who does not accept material things. Such a person is certainly elevated to the position of self-realization. Okay, back to text 41. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are distinguished by their qualities of work, O chastiser of the enemy, in accordance with the modes of nature. Text 42. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, wisdom, knowledge, and religiousness. These are the qualities by which the Brahmanas work. Text 43. Heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity, and leadership are the qualities of work for the Kshatriyas. Text 44. Farming, cow protection, and business are the qualities of work for the Vaishyas. And for the Shudras, there is labor and service to others. 45. By following his qualities of work, every man can become perfect. Now, please hear from me how this can be done. Text 46. By worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all pervading, man can, in the performance of his own duty, attain perfection. Purport. As stated in the 15th chapter, all living beings are fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. As such, the Supreme Lord is the beginning of all living entities. This is confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra, Janmadyasya Yataha. The Supreme Lord is therefore the beginning of life of every living entity. And the Supreme Lord, by his two energies, his external energy and internal energy, is all pervading. Therefore, one should worship the Supreme Lord with his energies. Generally, the Vaishnava devotees worship the Supreme Lord with his internal energy. His external energy is a perverted reflection of the internal energy. The external energy is a background, but the Supreme Lord, by the expansion of his plenary portion as Paramatma, is situated everywhere. He is the super soul of all demigods, all human beings, all animals, everywhere. One should therefore know that as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, it is his duty to render service unto the Supreme. Everyone should be engaged in devotional service to the Lord in full Krishna consciousness. That is recommended in this verse. Everyone should think that he is engaged in a particular type of occupation by Hrishikesha, master of the senses. And by the result of the work in which one is engaged, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, should be worshipped. If one thinks always in this way, in full Krishna consciousness, then by the grace of the Lord, he becomes fully aware of everything. That is the perfection of life. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Tesham aham samudharta. The Supreme Lord himself takes charge of delivering such a devotee. That is the highest perfection of life. In whatever occupation one may be engaged, if he serves the Supreme Lord, he will achieve the highest perfection. Would we be so fortunate as to hear some comments from Harsh?
When when group of persons are trying to execute some activity, they do the best they can. But if someone comes into their midst who has a big plan, who actually knows the whole scheme of things, let's say some people who are trying to build a house. If they don't know how to build a house properly, they'll be trying so many different things. But if an architect, expert architect comes there, he says, I have a lot of experience in doing this. I know exactly how to do it. If you follow my advice, it'll be done very nicely. So if they're reasonable people, they'll immediately accept. Yeah, it's a good idea. This is perfect. We were trying to do it, but we couldn't. We didn't know what we were doing. Now he's come. So in the same way, society should recognize when there's someone who knows exactly how everything should be done. And that's Krishna. Lord Krishna knows everything about everything. And there's no reason to be jealous or envious of him. If he knows, if he actually knows, and he's proven he knows, just by speaking Bhagavad Gita, it's obvious he knows what to speak of. He's the main character in the Srimad Bhagavatam, all the Puranas. Primarily, they're leading to Vishnu or Krishna. And it's not that just Krishna and a few others believe this. It's confirmed by Lord Brahma. It's confirmed by Lord Shiva. It's confirmed by all the sages, such as Narada and Vyas, Gargamuni. It's confirmed by all the great demigods, philosophers. So, and it's practical. The culture of India has been historically recognized as going back thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And how did they develop such a wonderful culture? Of course, now things may be changing due to the influence of Western countries that don't have such transcendental background knowledge. But we see that India, the culture, is very nicely organized. We see Lord Ramachandra, his rule. He was the king, the ideal king. And as the ideal king, he set the example for all kings to come. All the kings should strive to be like Lord Ramachandra. Lord Ramachandra gave full respect to the Brahmanas, always following their advice, never trying to rule above them. Even though he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he showed by example how to follow the instructions of the Brahmanas. Then society works very nicely. It's like our body. Our body works nicely when all the parts of the body are in conjunction or following nicely the instructions coming from the head. If they don't follow the instructions coming from the head, it becomes very chaotic. So this is what you're hearing here, is that all these arrangements, Krishna he knows how to do everything. So he knows how to set up society. He knows how to run control of the economy. He arranges, and salt is given so that it can remain fresh and it doesn't become contaminated. And so when all the different species, not just seeds, but the living entities all require water. And then goes underground, joins rivers, goes back to the ocean, and this system is going on. This is Krishna's plan. He knows how it works. He describes how it works. Here in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Anad Bhunti Bhutani Harjanyana Samabha. That food grains come from water. Water comes from sacrifices. Sacrifices come from performing one's prescribed duties. So this is the reason behind it. If everyone does their duty, then things work properly. It's like if people pay their debts, their fees to the water department and to the electrical department, then things go on nicely. The water is continually supplied, fresh water, electricity supplied. But if they don't pay their bills, then it will be cut off. It will be reduced. And also that system is coming from the Lord. Those who don't wish to cooperate with the Lord's plan, that they should pay back what they owe to Vishnu. And they can also use the demigods. Demigods are assisting Vishnu. So by supplying them their needs, Vishnu is satisfied also. But if one gives to Vishnu directly, that's even better. So it's a wonderful system. Everyone should acknowledge it. If we understand how vast the compendium of the Puranas, how complete it's given in the Vedas. And the Vedas, all the Vedas, all the Vedas, Krishna is to be known. Vedantakrit Veda Vedevacha. So one studies the Vedas, he knows that Krishna is the ultimate goal. And when one realizes him, then everything goes nicely. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. We'll read the next text, 647. It is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Prescribed duties according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. Purport: one's occupational duty is prescribed in Bhagavad Gita. As already discussed in previous verses, the duties of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra are prescribed according to the particular modes of nature. One should not imitate another's duty. A man who is by nature attracted to the kind of work done by Shudras should not artificially claim himself to be a Brahmana, although he may be born into a Brahmana family. In this way, one should work according to his own nature. No work is abominable if performed in the service of the Supreme Lord. The occupational duty of a Brahmana is certainly in the mode of goodness, but if a person is not by nature in the mode of goodness, he should not imitate the occupational duty of a Brahmana. For a Kshatriya or administrator, there are so many abominable things. A Kshatriya has to be violent to kill his enemies, and sometimes a Kshatriya has to tell lies for the sake of diplomacy. Such violence and duplicity accompany political affairs. But a Kshatriya is not supposed to give up his occupational duty and try to perform the duties of a Brahmana. One should act to satisfy the Supreme Lord. For example, Arjuna was a Kshatriya. He was hesitating to fight for the other party. But if such fighting is performed for the sake of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there need be no fear of degradation. In the business field also, sometimes a merchant has to tell so many lies to make a profit. If he does not do so, there can be no profit. Sometimes a merchant says, "Oh, my dear customer, For you I am making no profit, but one should know that without profit the merchant cannot exist. Therefore, it should be taken as a simple lie if a merchant says that he is not making a profit. But the merchant should not think that because he is engaged in an occupation in which the telling of lies is compulsory, he should give up his occupation, his profession, and pursue the profession of a Brahmana. That is not recommended. Whether one is a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, or a Shudra doesn't matter. If he serves by his work the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even Brahmanas who perform different types of sacrifices sometimes must kill animals because sometimes animals are sacrificed in such ceremonies. Similarly, if a Kshatriya engaged in his own occupation kills an enemy, there is no sin incurred. In the third chapter, these matters have been clearly and elaborately explained. Every man should work for the purpose of yajna or for Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anything done for personal satisfaction, personal sense gratification, is a cause of bondage. The conclusion is that everyone should be engaged according to the particular mode of nature he has acquired, and he should decide to work only to serve the supreme cause of the Supreme Lord. So sometimes we may be thinking of good and evil in terms of a material thing. Most of the time we are. We're thinking that, okay, killing somebody is evil and, you know, mm, planting flowers is good or something, something like that. But not necessarily. And in every profession, whether it's seemingly harmless or seemingly violent, actually there's sin there if we're performing that for our own personal sense gratification. For instance, being a gardener requires so much killing of different types of living entities, insects and plants, and terraforming the earth in such a way that different animals, depending on the scope of whatever project you're doing, different animals will have to be kicked out of their homes. It's like that, or even just living in this world, breathing simply. If one says, okay, in order to avoid sins, hurting other individuals, I'll just meditate. Well, even breathing, one is killing so many different microorganisms. And sitting, one will step on an ant or all these different things. So just existing in this world, simply existing in this world, um, for our own sense gratification will cause so many problems. Is it better if I sit over here? Okay. I just don't want you guys to just, strain your necks. Okay. Yeah, simply existing in this world for our own sense gratification. We incur so many sins no matter what we're doing. We're just doing nothing, you know. But engaging in Krishna's service, no matter what that might look like externally, it's completely transcendental and actually purifies us and liberates us from um, the sinful reactions. So, um, this morning we were talking about peace, the peace formula and harmony, because the material world is a very diverse, seemingly diverse place. And all this diversity has been arranged by the different energies of the Lord, the modes of nature, which is categorizing the different creatures into their respective positions in the world according to their karma and their qualities that they've acquired. And we were hearing that the real connection that's there is actually Krishna, because Krishna says, Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetuna nena konteya jagati parivartate, that he's actually, that the whole material energy is moving under his direction, under his control. So he's the controller of the material energy, and everything that's there is for his enjoyment. So he possesses everything, everything is for his enjoyment. All non-moving and moving beings. And so one who knows this attains peace. That's the peace formula. Knowledge of Krishna is the peace formula. And what is this knowledge of Krishna? Krishna says, Bahunam Janmanamante Ganavan Mam Prapadyate. Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. That this knowledge of Krishna means to surrender to Krishna. And one came after many, many births, such a soul, he considers that Krishna is everything, because everything is coming from him and everything is working under his direction. So one who's truly situated in knowledge will surrender to Krishna. And by doing so, one can overcome all the difficulties that are there. One can attain real peace. Mam eva ye prapadinte, mayam etam tarantite, that only by surrendering to Krishna can one actually overcome this illusion, this maya, which is born of contact with the material modes of nature and puts the living entity in ignorance, forgetfulness of his real identity as being a servant of Krishna. And so, because everything is working under Krishna's direction, he's given us the perfect system by which everything can operate very nicely, as Maharaj was really giving that nice commentary. That he's actually the perfect brain behind this creation, and he's devised it in such a way that everything has a place, everything has intention. And to position ourselves according to God's intelligence is the most intelligent thing that we can do. And this system of this Varna Shrama system is a system by which, you know, large scale surrender to Krishna can happen, you know, on a societal level. And we can see that so many different religions and ideologies and philosophies have been created to try to solve this problem of, you know, disharmony or, you know, lack of peace in the world, but they haven't been successful. Whether that's trying to put some fallible conditioned living entity at the center of reality, trying to put myself or, you know, ultimately these things. So many problems are there. We see that. So many problems are there. You know, worshiping the demigods for whatever reason and so many things, you know. But when Krishna is at the center of all of our activities, then we can really be happy because he's at the root of reality, you know. He's taking care of everything. So it's not necessarily that we have, you know, he's already in control, right? And we're being punished because we're not realizing that, you know. So someone might look at the things that are happening in the material world and they might say, well, that's evidence for Krishna, that God doesn't exist, because why would God allow these things to happen? But actually, it's evidence that there's conscious reciprocation from God and punishing us for not following the divine system that He's given us. You know, as we can see, when we are operating accordingly, life is very peaceful. Things of the material world are mitigated substantially. And when we disobey these, uh, the scriptural injunctions, then you can see that the material situation becomes way more complex and complicated and entangling. So the intelligent position is to follow this system that Krishna has created for our benefit. And if we don't, then well, everyone still has their nature, their particular nature, but it's just a cause of bondage now. So I still have to engage in activities. I still have to do these things, but now it's just a cause of bondage. So really, there's nothing to lose at all. We have everything to gain by following Krishna's instructions. We don't have to give up anything. We're just engaging our nature with the full realization that it's meant for Krishna's satisfaction only, and that there's a proper way to do everything. You know. So it's very nice. So we were hearing about the qualities of the different classifications of man: the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Shudras, and the Vaishyas. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, in that order. Krishna is given in that order. And the Brahmanas are engaging in works in the mode of goodness. So knowledge is there. Knowledge of the Shastras. So they're the intelligence. And the intelligence is organizing, compartmentalizing, consolidating the other categories of workers into their respective places so that they can be happy and peaceful and satisfied completely and surrendered to Krishna according to their nature, and they can make progress. Go back to Godhead. So it's a wonderful system. If we follow this system, then the process of self-realization on a large scale will be uh, expedited exponentially. It'll speed up very nicely, and lots of wonderful things will come from that. Like Maharaj was saying that Krishna gives that nice verse. I forget the Sanskrit, but from the food grains come from the rains, and the rains come from the sacrifices, and sacrifices born a prescribed duty. So for following this prescribed duties, then uh, there's going to be no drought of anything, any such thing. There's going to be a diminishing of all kinds of problems in the material world, problems created by human beings who are, in ignorance, problems created by the demigods who aren't being satisfied, problems created by other living entities who uh, not taken care of properly. You know, systems are being abused. Cows are being slaughtered by the billions. So much land on the earth is being destroyed for this sense gratification. Just to satisfy the tongue and belly of just horrible. So many things are happening. We can prevent this all from happening if we reach this Krishna consciousness very vigorously and with lots of strength. And fight. We have to fight. You know. So it's nice that we're being trained up to be situated in the mode of goodness, to engage in the work of the Brahmana, and then we can go and train and help other people as well. So this is a wonderful opportunity that we have. And we're learning about what are our prescribed duties. What are the duties of what do we have to do in this human form of life? Well, we have to become Krishna conscious. We have to study the Shastra. We have to apply our intelligence. Apply our intelligence to the Shastra, learn it, and then we can teach it to others. And they can be rightfully situated. They can go on working and they won't be wasting their whole life accumulating some money and then just wasting it on something horrible, like that. But they can accumulate their money and they can give to Krishna and they can play a wonderful role in Krishna's mission, in spreading Krishna's mission. So we should want to engage people, everyone in Krishna's mission. We should want to be engaged in Krishna's mission, and we should want to engage others in Krishna's mission. You know, so this guy's gonna go on for how many years working at this job? Well, you know, we should let him know that more or less he's working himself into a miserable condition of life. But he can go on working in the same way, but in a way which is going to bring him closer to Krishna, you know. So that's real compassion. We should look at somebody, we should look at everybody and see that, like, man, this person, we're gonna, like, really gonna just like bite my tongue. I hear every single day, you know, every day, 2 times a day, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, or reading on my own time, listening on my own time of the absolute necessity of this movement and the need to spread it, but then I won't partake, or I won't do my duty. I won't be happy. I just won't be happy. I won't be satisfied. But if I go on preaching very vigorously, then I'll be very happy. And we can see that. I'm miserable 1 second, but then the second I just start preaching, then everything goes away, you know? Or, you know, I'll drag my feet throughout the whole day, you know, and then Harinam comes around and it's like wonderful. But how much better would it be if I realize, you know, that this is a whole package deal. Everything I'm doing matters. It's all connected to each other, you know. If I chant my rounds very nicely, all these different things, you know. So, anyways, those are just some ideas. Anyone have any comments?
Um, my question is, so this is at the end of the last purport that we read. It says, even brahmanas who perform different types of sacrifice sometimes must kill animals because sometimes animals are sacrificed in such ceremonies. So my question is, in regards to the Buddha, why didn't the Buddha preach Krishna consciousness instead of preaching against the Vedas? Wouldn't it have? I understand that it's Krishna's inconceivable plan, but is there any like logic to that at all?
It's gonna come up a few times, and uh, heard much about it. So I'm not sure. Anyone have anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you could raise this point of what just preach Krishna consciousness, but you know, the main plan was to get everybody off of the Vedas because everybody's misusing the Vedic literature to twist it for their own, sense gratification, essentially. So then, just to bring them to a state of love and compassion, which then later, Shankaracharya brought everybody back to the Vedas as being an authority, and then Lord Chaitanya expanded upon that authority, and his disciples expanded upon that authority, further illuminating how Krishna's position is within that. So I mean, your question kind of answered it, where yeah, Krishna's inconceivable plan, but it's just the way that he wanted to do it. But in short, everybody was attached to Vedic literature, but they were doing it wrong. So you can just, we'll put it this way: Krishna says that fools deride me when I descend here on earth. So if you think you have a proper understanding of the Vedas and then somebody's telling you the conclusion of the Vedas, it's very hard for you to grasp it. But if somebody, shifts your mind to passionate and logical and level-headed and open, then it's a lot easier to, understand the truth when it actually comes. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. My question is actually, I was just curious of what examples there are of these animal sacrifices in these ceremonies. So it says sometimes the brahmanas must kill animals because sometimes animals are sacrificed in such ceremonies. And I was just curious what examples are for these ceremonies.
Yeah, there's a sacrifice for there's one famous one that you hear about quite often in the Vedas called Ashwamedha Yagyo. It's a horse sacrifice, but basically when somebody is, when a powerful kshatriya wants to kind of contest, the other kings around the world, they'll do this thing where they'll send this horse around, and the king will follow the horse to the different places that it goes, and wherever it goes, he'll fight, or he'll either fight or be diplomatic and say you surrender to me, or if you don't, then I'll just take you, conquer you. And then at the end of that sacrifice, the horse ultimately is sacrificed, and he attains, the soul in that horse attains some, mission. There are other examples that are given about the Vedics, the sacrificing the animals. Particularly, I heard that brahmanas used to do this in order to test the efficacy of their like mantras and their abilities, and they do so in such a way that the animal would get a nice position after that as well. So those are some examples of brahmanas engaging in those kinds of activities. There could be more, but that's as far as I know. There's one more. You want to? Oh, yeah.
Says, therefore one should not give up his work which is born of his nature, even if such work is full of fault. So how do I know? Yeah, I mean, like, is that if I'm doing something and it's full of fault, it's probably not, of my nature. And so, like, maybe you can help me with this misunderstanding.
I've had this thought too, actually. I must be having a hard time with this because it's just not my nature. Yeah, I mean, as devotees, ultimately we have to do the needful, and so we might end up doing things which are challenging to us on a material level and on a spiritual level, but we're rise above our nature and realize that we're actually transcendental, or rise above our material nature, our material conditioning, and realize that we're transcendental, and we're not really limited to that nature. So we can do unlimited things for Krishna's service. So we might be given a duty which will be difficult to us on that level, but it will be an impetus for us to, and a great a boost towards our becoming fully Krishna conscious and fully spiritual, and having spiritual consciousness. not being limited to the body, not being limited to the mind, overcoming those different things. Now, there's a balance that one has to strike, and we can talk more about that. Yeah.
So, in the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking to Arjuna about karma yoga, engaging one's nature in devotional service. And Krishna speaks to Arjuna saying that a man is driven helplessly to act according to his nature. So, no matter what you do, it's just naturally what you're going to gravitate to, no matter what happens. So, he says, Prakrite Kriyamani Gunai Kamani Sarvasaha Hankara Vimutama Kartahamati Manyate. That we think we're free and that we're the controller, that we're the doer, but actually we're just being controlled by the multi-material nature. So then he goes on, he says, like what will repression accomplish? Meaning if we try to like shut out our nature, like what good is it? So it's like, okay, say my nature is, from our perspective, my nature is just to be a sense enjoyer, But Krishna refutes this in the end of the chapter by showing how that lust is the gateway to hell, and it's only born from the lower modes of material nature of associating with them. So then he tells Arjuna definitively to steady your mind, control your mind, and be fixed up with spiritual strength, spiritual intelligence, and not give in to this lust. So if we're thinking in terms of my nature, not my nature, versus like Krishna consciousness as a whole, we're not looking at it properly, because we have to see the philosophy of that. Yeah, we can either go try to enjoy the material world, but there's just going to be unlimited sense gratification that never leaves us satisfied, and we'll always feel just completely empty inside, Or Krishna says later in the Bhagavad Gita that coming to this platform in the beginning, it tastes like poison, but at the end, it tastes like nectar. So we have to do it sooner or later. So why prolong something that's just suffering? We might as well just get it over with now. And the more we have that opportunity, we should take to it. But as far as my nature, if, I'm like a little scrawny person and it's hard for me to pick up my arms and, they're expecting me to play the mridanga for like 3 hours straight, that's not really my nature, It makes me uncomfortable and I don't like doing it. So then it's like frustrating all the time. You could get stronger in that situation, but somebody's like a real deep thinking, like artistic person, and then they're being forced to go do hard labor, they're not going to be happy. But in a large part, we don't even really know what our nature is because we haven't been brought up in a Vedic culture. So we're just acting according to like everything we hear and see and feel on these whimsical ways. So then when we come here, we're like, oh, this isn't me, that's not me. We don't know who we are. We don't know what we like to do. But if we just get engaged in service, it all comes out. Sooner or later, you'll see that particular things resonate more with you that are easier for you. But we don't turn away from anything else just because it doesn't fit our nature, because it's all for devotional service. So Vaishnava is capable of doing everything because it's transcendental. But we're doing it for Krishna. But naturally, as you apply yourself to the service, getting out of the realm of, I like this, I like that. Okay, I'm going to do it for Krishna. You'll see some things come more natural. So to think, I think Krishna consciousness isn't my nature. This is not a proper view of it.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai.